I'm not one of those people who looks back with nostalgia at the past and says the world was much better off in the good old days. Technologically speaking, we are infinitely better today than I was back when I was growing up, just as when I was growing up, I was infinitely better off than when my parents grew up, and so forth and so on. I would never want to go back to the past technologically, but socially, I think we've lost our way in a lot of things, and I was thinking about this a lot recently and thought it would make an interesting video. So here's my view of where we've gone south versus the good old days. Now, a lot of this comes out of a long discussion I've been having about personal responsibility and my position that if you want something, you need to earn it. You have to get off your butt and work hard for it, and you need to live within your means and not take certain actions, no matter how much you might want to take them, until you're established and stable enough to do so. And this is something that kind of pisses off the left, which doesn't know what personal responsibility is and thinks people are too stupid to do what's in their own best interests. Considering the state of modern public education, they might be right, but that's something that the left has purposely created in the modern world. They don't want people to be smart and self-reliant. They want them to be gullible and reliant on the state. But more on that later. See, when I was growing up, pretty much everybody, when they turned 16, went out and got a part-time job. It wasn't just for the poor, it was for everybody who not only wanted some pocket money, but it was the expectation that everybody went and started learning job skills in the real world. And don't get me wrong, lots of us had jobs before we turned 16. We had paper routes and mowed lawns, we just went and did stuff for cash. It wasn't a world that was nearly as litigious as it is today, where you didn't have to carry a huge insurance policy to have a neighborhood kid come over and push your lawnmower around for half an hour on Saturday morning. But anyway, when you turned 16, you went and you got yourself a minimum wage job at McDonald's or some retail store, and you learned some responsibility. You learned how to treat people. You learned how to be at work on time. You learned all kinds of things that were really important in the real world. The reason we could take these low-paying jobs is because we lived at home and our parents paid most of our expenses. We didn't have to pay rent, we didn't have to buy our own food, we didn't have to pay gas for our own cars, if we had cars at all, of course. Virtually everything we earned was ours to spend how we wanted, which was, in and of itself, a learning experience because we had to figure out how to budget so we have money when we needed it and we didn't just blow it and have nothing until the next paycheck. And these were valuable lessons at a time of relative innocence that would serve us well later in life. You really didn't see a lot of people older than, say, their early 20s working in minimum wage jobs, and if you did, those were the dregs, the losers, the people who didn't learn their lessons when they were supposed to. But those weren't lessons that the left wants you to learn. They don't want you to be independent. In fact, they want you to be very dependent on the government. So they started making it hard for kids to get jobs. Huge insurance requirements, tons of time restrictions, tons of limitations on when anyone under 16 could ever work made most companies give up. It's almost impossible for a minor to get a job with a major company anymore. It's all that think of the children bullshit. But it's not. They're not thinking of the children. If they were, they'd be giving these kids jobs and letting them learn the life lessons that they largely have lost. Instead, the norm today is no work at all. They go to school, learn the substandard lessons in public schools, get out, and usually go to college, all paid for by mortgaging their future. Because back in my day, we worked hard, and we often paid for college out of our own pockets, or at least that's how I did it. By the time I turned 18, because I'd been working consistently for years and was good at it, my employer was jonesing for me to get into management. I wasn't making anything remotely close to minimum wage. But I also wasn't being stupid. I wasn't out getting drunk every night. I wasn't out doing drugs. I didn't have a dozen kids that I had to support. I mean, I could have. I just wasn't stupid. And that's the thing today. Lots of kids are just stupid because they've never been raised not to be. They've been trained by their parents and by the schools that they're special, that they deserve a trophy just for showing up, that instead of having to earn things, they just deserve things because they managed to crawl out of bed in the morning, that they don't have to get up in the morning and go to a job and impress their employers. Heck, half of them are so busy protesting, they don't even want to do their assignments in college, and colleges are letting them get away with it. But let's talk about college. Back when we were responsible for paying for our own colleges, or at least making a significant contribution, we cared about what went on because it was coming, at least partially, out of our own pockets. It wasn't a career. It was a place that you could go and learn and get out so you could go do something with your life. It was an investment in your future. Today, kids don't see it that way. And you know why? Because the government got involved. Liberalism sticks its ugly face into the lives of our children once again. So now that you don't have kids earning anything, and there isn't enough earned scholarships out there to fill up those hollowed halls of learning, the government just had to start handing out money left and right to almost anybody who wanted it so they could get an education. Well, not so much an education as an extended childhood, free of actual responsibility for their lives. Because unfortunately, the public education system has failed our children. Instead of becoming a solid foundation for living, high schools have become little more than liberal indoctrination centers that don't actually teach anybody how to live. And the colleges now need to take up the slack, teaching basic life skills to people who should have already figured that shit out earlier. So we're getting kids being educated, and I use that term loosely, on the public dime for an even longer period of time, but these kids don't even want to take responsibility for that education. Now you've got liberal socialists like Bernie Sanders screaming that college should be free, and Occupy retards demanding that all their college debts be forgiven because fuck personal responsibility. But the infantilizing of America's young adults doesn't stop there. I mean, look at Obamacare, which now requires that the insurance companies cover all young adults under their parents' insurance until age 26. 26? Because by 26, half these coddle idiots haven't even moved out of their parents' basement. Most of them have never had a job in their lives. And that brings us back to jobs, which is full circle from where we started. When these special little snowflakes get out of college with their big degrees in women's studies or underwater basket weaving, they expect to get high-paying jobs right out of the gate. But it doesn't work that way. They might have the knowledge, supposedly anyhow, but they still lack the skills to make that knowledge useful. So, degree or not, they're going to have to start at the bottom, where they're going to have to learn all the most basic skills that they never learned growing up, since they've never actually grown up. And that pisses them off. Now, it pisses them off because they had to have these college loans that they have to pay. Duh! But they also want to get on with their lives. But they simply haven't earned the right to do so. And that's why you get all the whining about minimum wage. Because instead of working a minimum wage job when they were younger and didn't have any responsibilities, they want to have a family while getting paid minimum wage. And it just doesn't work that way. See, in my case, not only did I have a nice shiny degree, or multiple degrees, I had these letters of recommendation from previous employers where I held positions of responsibility. I not only had book knowledge, I had demonstrable real-world experience, and that opens doors. Well, that, and I also made the right decisions in life, so I didn't have these huge financial weights around my neck. I didn't have a family to support. I didn't have rent to pay. I could take all those steps as I decided that I was financially ready to take them, something a lot of crazy liberals just don't understand. So instead of taking responsibility for their actions and accepting the consequences for their failures, they insist that others facilitate their success by giving them more and more and more. They deserve trophies just for showing up, damn it. You know, this whole infantilization of America, where nothing that ever goes wrong is your fault, that anything bad that happens, you immediately look for someone else to blame and hold your hand out so you can get some money to cure your emotional boo-boos. It's just pathetic. We've taken young adults and turned them into babies. We've stopped expecting them to grow up. They now occupy an eternal adolescent period. According to Pew Research, more young people aged 18 to 34 live with their parents than on their own with a partner. The average age of people who make minimum wage is 35, and 88% of people making minimum wage are 20 or above. This is pathetic, especially in a highly educated nation like ours. But this is what happens when you have no expectations and you tell people they cannot fail. This is what happens when people don't understand personal responsibility. And this is what happens when people fail to learn the lessons of the past. I'm not being nostalgic. I'm being realistic. And that's something people desperately need these days. Sociologists and psychologists have recognized just how terrible the legacy of everybody gets a trophy has been. Trophies are for winners, and winners are those who go above and beyond and do better than everyone else. It's something to strive for, not something to just be handed because it makes you feel good. But that's what's wrong with this country. We're too interested in feeling good and not interested enough in actually being good. And that's sad.